This year is dedicated actually in memory of Avraham Abba ben Yosef Silver, whose yurtzeit actually is today. Was a very well-known leader in the Jewish community. This year should serve as an neshama and a sense of nechama to the family. Uber. How many of you, by show of hands, have used an Uber before? No way! Really?
Wrong crowd.
Very interesting. Have you ever used Uber before?
Have I ever used who?
Uber.
No.
Okay.
Have you?
No. But I'm not like a downtown guy. And okay, interesting. So, does everyone here know how Uber works? I'm assuming, right? It's an app. You press it. Some guy picks you up. Drives you somewhere. Yeah, I'm going to the game after. Yeah. And essentially, the whole system of Uber is that it's this social network of people who can drive you places, and people who have signed up to be a driver have been looked into. There's some type of minimum security, and then you've prearranged everything. So the person does not take any payment from you on the spot. It is all done by Uber. The person says, "Oh, you want to go from U of T to the airport? That's $25." In a cab, if you were to call up a taxi driver, I'm making up these numbers, I have absolutely no idea. It would charge, let's say, $45 for that exact same trip. And the savings is significant. Right? We're not talking like 10% savings. We're not talking 20% savings. We're talking, I know that people have gone from, let's say, the Clantabark area at the Thornhill for like $10, right? Which, we're talking about 50% savings. Yeah, and why it's worth their while, it could be they're saying, I'm going there anyways.
Right.
Might as well make a couple bucks.
Right.
Now, one of the reasons why it's worth their while, and here's the issue. What do you think are the issues, the legal or ethical issues that we have to deal with? Okay, so Dina de Malchut Dina is an interesting one because we know that the law of the land, especially when it comes to monetary policy, meaning if the government would say, no, you can't keep Shabbat, that we might not have to listen to. When it comes to monetary policy and economics and business, those things, the law of the land is actually very important. But how would that matter for Uber? How does it matter for Uber?
Oh, because they just made some sort of ruling last week.
What?
I don't know. Toronto's trying to regulate it.
They're asking Uber to not continue services.
Right. So
what? Telling them not to.
Okay. So why is it there's a conflict with the city and with Uber? Why? Why is there conflict?
Because taxis are regulated and Uber isn't.
Okay, this is very important. If I'm a taxi service, I am now. Why does it?
You're
So,
a
okay,
legitimate taxi service.
if I'm a legitimate taxi service, I'm regulated. But so what? Why does that matter? What about free competition? Why not free markets?
Because that's not a free market. Because the taxis are regulated, it means that they can't just do whatever.
So why are the taxis regulated? What's the rationale behind the city regulating taxis? What's the rationale? Why would the city do that?
Consistent fares.
Okay, consistent fares. What else? Safety. Now, not only
Taxes, maybe?
probably taxes. Now, not only is there an issue of regulation, but let's face it, they have to pay a fee for their licensing. Right? If you say, "Oh, Mr. Government Agency, I want to become licensed," they don't say, "Sure, no problem." They say, "Great, give me 10 grand. Give me, I don't know exactly what the fee is." So the city makes a lot of money. Again, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not that much money. I just see this another stabbing in a fula. It's really a crisis. We should also keep in mind that there's been about 6 attacks already today.
Really? I heard about 2.
I said there's been about 6. So the city has licensing fees, and the assumption is, why is it they have to charge people for these fees? The rationale behind it is because why? If they do security, we want to make sure everything's regulated, they have proper meters, they're not cheating the system. There are certain things that there's a cost to the government to making sure there's a real system.
Oversight.
Yeah, oversight. I'm sure there's... Is it from the Ministry of Transportation? Does the taxi regulation fall under the Ministry of Transportation? Ministry of
I think it's
Transportation? Yeah. Anyways, whatever. None of us know anything, so that's good. The second thing, what about ethically? Are there any ethical issues that we have to take into consideration when using an Uber?
There's already a service providing rides, right?
Right.
you're competing with them. Is that fair competition?
Okay, very good. That's an important question. You're making people compete. And in theory, you could, especially if I just told you, if I were to tell you, oh, take an Uber, take a taxi. Would you like to save 50% of your fare? What normal human being would choose to pay double? So maybe you're going to actually squash the competition and destroy the entire taxi industry, which, by the way, is one of the arguments that the city is actually saying, that you're going to hurt the entire taxi industry. Okay. Would halacha be concerned with any of these issues? Some yes, some no. What do you think? Hello.
Hi, is this
Hey.
Uber?
Come on in.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I had class.
No worries. Would you like some sushi?
Sure. Thank you.
Help yourself.
Well, competition for sure.
Okay, what is we're going to have to discuss this. Competition? What do we say about Jewish law and competition?
Well, isn't there an issue with, like, if someone is known in the city or whatever, there's an established shop, let's say, selling something, that you can't just necessarily go in and set up your own shop if you're going to be selling the same thing. It's going to be direct competition if there isn't enough of a market support.
Okay, good. So we're going to need to, and that's going to be today's topic. I can break this down into a number of different areas of what might be some of the issues and challenges. I want to deal with the first topic today, which is why I called it part 1 of 3. Part 1 of 2, sorry. I want to deal with competition. Because this is something which everyone throws out. I just mentioned before I brought sushi. So then said, oh, good, there's competition, because in that block, if you go to Lawrence and Bathurst, there's Kosher Gourmet, they sell sushi. Across, do me a favor, I think that's what you call it. There's Kosher Gourmet, there's Slice and Bite, which is across the street. Is there a third sushi place at Bathurst and Lawrence?
Most likely.
There must be something else, right?
Pretty close.
Pretty close, right? And there's also, you go up to Wilson, there's, so, no, I can't talk, absolutely not.
In the middle of a share.
So all these things need to be understood. How do we deal with market competition in Jewish law? And this will have major ramifications. This is something which I believe is very misunderstood by many people. And the key is to see the source. So what I did was, I took, which is source number 1. Page number 1 is the Talmudic passage. And I broke down source number 1 into the statement, the English translation, into 5 parts to it. Each part, for those of you that know anything about the Talmud, is really important to understand. Because the next line, are they arguing? Are they clarifying? Are they expanding? That will be really, really important. Because the question will be, what's the conclusion of this Talmudic passage? Because if you don't appreciate the original source, what comes afterwards is going to be meaningless. So even if all we do is get through this, as they say, dayenu, okay? Let's read this very carefully. So, the idea of competition, there's a few different Talmudic passages that deal with it. This is the main one, although there's mentioned in a number of different places. It is the Talmud Baba Batra on folio 21b. I will read the Aramaic and translate, or you can read the English coming along. Comes along Rav Huna. So, from a historical perspective, right, we are going back in time, 1,600 years. Amar Rav Huna, Hai bar mevoa de uki recha. So, I need to explain one more thing. They used to live in a mavoi. In the olden days, they used to live in streets with courts. So, this line down over here is a road. Okay? So you travel down this road, and you can go to this house, and to this house, this house, and this house. They would then have their backyards, which were actually connected. Their court systems, as opposed to today we have like a front yard, they kind of had like backyards. And then on the other side, they would have, sorry, I'm going to grab this from you, each area, the houses would be interlocking here. So you'd have a house, it would go into like an enclave of a few houses, and that's how they travel. That's called a mavoi. And that was it. Now, you have 2 different types of mavois in Jewish law. One is mavoh mefulash, which is a thoroughfare which goes through, and one which is a muzgar, which is closed. We call it dead end. So a dead end street, like a court, and like another type of street. So the question is, this is going to be very important, what type of street is this? You'll see why that would play a very important role. So, the Talmud says that if someone has a shop in a mavui, so what type of mavui is this? So this is a regular street. This is not a major street. We're not talking about, this is not a Bathurst or a Spadina. This is like a Harvard Street, right? This is just now, Harvard Street has access to other places, but again, it's like a block, a few blocks. We're not talking about a metropolitan city. You'll see why. And says the Talmud, you can prevent another person from opening up the same type of shop in the mavui. He can prevent them from doing it. Why? Because you are preventing me from earning a living. So I am a woodcutter. Now remember, this is the mavui. This is this little enclave, right? This is not a city. Don't get confused. This is an enclave. The Talmud uses very specific language. So in this enclave, there was one woodcutter, and he would cut wood for the local couple of blocks, right? That's what he would do. He can say, says Rav Huna, another guy would like to open up a woodcutting shop. He says, no, sorry, I am the woodcutter of this block, of this street. You cannot open up another shop. Everyone clear on the very specific situation? Right? So that's a case. Woodcutter, small enclave, I am the woodcutter. No one else can come in. Here we go. Next line. Lema Messiah lay. Maybe there's a proof. And what's this proof for this opinion? So, let's say we are fishermen in the water. We're going fishing. I set up a net. Let's say here's my water. I have a net, and pretend this is my net. You want to come and you want to fish. Public water. Public street. You can do whatever you want. Says the Talmud, if you want to set up your own fishing net, there has to be a distance between the two nets. So your net, you're here first, you also want to join in fishing, you have to distance it a certain distance. What is that distance? Says Rabbi, not a parsa. It doesn't matter that distance, right? A mile, let's say. Right? Okay. Says the Talmud, no, you cannot compare the two cases. Meaning, the case of the fish that you have to set up, that you force the second guy, is only allowed to put out his net a mile away. That you cannot extrapolate to our case of the woodcutter. Why not? Says the Talmud, Shani dagim dahave Sarah. Because when it comes to fish, all nets are the same. I'm going to explain to you what that means. If I have a net that goes down, all the fish recognize my net. If you come and you put out your net, my fish are going to go to you now. Meaning, if you have two nets, I don't understand fish. But, so they say, if you have two nets in the same area, I guess the fish aren't the smartest of the lot. They see a net, they just go. So therefore, to some extent, you're taking away my fish. Because that fish would come to me. Now it's not going to come to me anymore because your net is cast out there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what is the Talmud saying that you cannot compare the case of the nets and the fish to our woodcutting case? How come they're not the same? Aren't they the same? The Talmud says they're not the same. How are they different? How is the fishing different from the woodcutting?
It's a different type of competition.
What type of competition is it?
Indirect.
Explain.
Because in the case of the fish, you have two options. The fish are going to go wherever, whatever. It doesn't matter to them. They're fish.
Good.
However,
Good. Excellent. And therefore, why is that worse? Why is that? No, don't open your fish guy. You cannot put your fish out there, your net out there. Why not? Because?
The fish don't know.
And as opposed to?
As opposed to if there's a wood guy.
Yeah.
And you're my wood guy, I'm always going to go to you. However, if someone else opens up there, someone over there may go to him. and you've already been established there.
But wait a second, no, but it's saying the Talmud is saying that this fish case, we don't allow you to open up a fish case. And therefore, this fish case cannot be used as a proof to the opening statement. We don't have a proof for why Rav Huna says what he says. Meaning, we thought we can extrapolate from the fish case. The fish case, everyone agrees. Limit competition. Oh, limit competition, that's a great proof for Rav Huna. Answers the Talmud, no, you cannot compare. Because the fish case is different than wood cutting. Fish case is limited. Don't extrapolate from the fish case that we don't allow competition. You can't assume that that would also apply to wood cutting. You cannot apply that. Rav Huna does not have a good proof. We thought it could come to fishing. We can't. Fishing is separate, unique, and distinct. And I asked the question, what makes fishing unique and distinct where we don't allow competition? And therefore, we have to find out, so what's Rav Huna's source for not allowing woodcutting competition? Is that clear? Okay. So the question is, what makes fishing so different and unique and distinct as opposed to woodcutting?
Because you're not catching the fish based on any merit of what you've done yourself. Because with woodcutting, if you're a good woodcutter, then somebody's going to go to you, and then you have a fair competition. With fishing, you just put a net out, and you're not actually doing anything to merit getting the fish.
Excellent answer. Everyone hear that? The Talmud said all nets are the same. So I put out my net, you put out your net, you're taking my fish. A net's a net. Rashi says that the fish see a net, they just go to the net. Wood cutting. Okay. Also, what's interesting about fish. Actually, I'll wait a second. Yeah, anyone else want to make a comment?
I was going to say,
yeah.
Alternatively, that fish, like we said, don't have the ability to understand the quality of the product versus humans do.
Careful, there's no product here.
Or the quality of whatever.
It's a bait, right? They see a net. They're like, hey, let's check out this net. And they go there. Oops, that was a bad move. Right? They don't have that ability. They're not like, they don't send a mass text, avoid location, nautical mile, whatever it is, right? They don't say that.
I mean, you could also argue that it's a case of having a resource as opposed to like providing a service for people.
Ooh,
so
very
if
good.
Fish, it's like, let's say there's, I don't know, some other thing, like an area where you're like digging for gold. So if two people come and dig for gold, then in the same place, you're obviously going to be limiting. But if it's a service, then even though there's a limited number of people, but it's still a different.
Where did Genius family come from? Okay, it's my sister. So very good. It's very, very important. When it comes to fishing, there's a finite, right? It's like, here are the fish. There's 1,000 fish here. One person is providing it. When you come in and put your net out there, you're competing for that fish. Wood cutting, you could argue, is a little bit different because it's service-based. Meaning, okay, I guess you're competing for the tree. We're going to assume that all trees are public. It's a different world, right? Anyone can go to any tree at any point in time and cut it down. Everyone needs it. And everyone needs trees on a regular basis. That's used for heating, that's used for cooking. So there's always this demand, right, all the time, and you have the ability to cut these trees down. Fish, you're going after, that's my fish that you're going after. It's a scarce resource, and you're taking my fish. Wood cutting, it's not a scarce resource, that's a service. Okay. If we were to extrapolate so far into Uber, would this help us at all or not help us at all? Uber and taxi. What would you say? Is Uber allowed to compete with taxis?
Yes, because it's a service.
Oh, very good. It's providing a service. We see when it comes to a service
that it's okay.
Might be okay.
However, fish, like we're not talking about licenses as well when it comes to 5,000 years ago.
Yes.
Nobody needs a license to catch fish.
Right.
Taxi drivers are paying, I think the market price is just under $100,000 right now.
Right.
In the city of Toronto
Okay,
for
good.
a taxi license.
Good. Okay, good. We'll get the licenses. Very good. Good. Excellent. We did that in the introduction. Very good. Licenses are going to be a very interesting case. Good question. Let's continue the Talmud. Part 3. Step 3. Amr le Ravina Rava. Lema Ravuna Damar ki Rabbi Yehuda. Tetanan. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Lo yechalecha v'ni chlayot v'gozim l'tinokot v'nei shemar gilin etzlo chachamim atirim. The Talmud says there's two different opinions. Are you allowed to go out on the street corner and say, kids, I have candies. But, okay, forget like the world today that like you can't do that, right? I have candies. I have sweets for you. Please come into my store. Now you're going to buy my shoes. Right? Now you're going to come into my store and buy my toys. Am I allowed to entice kids on the street corner them to come into my store and shop? The first opinion says you're not allowed to do it. Chachamim say you are allowed to do it. Now, let's go through this with modern day applications. And by the way, the halacha is, as the Gemara concludes, maybe this Chachamim allow it. What's the rationale behind it? Because you're allowed to entice people. Why does it, according to the rabbis, you're always allowed to entice people? Why? You come into my store, and you're on the street corner, right? So you have two different people on the street corner, and we're all talking to you guys. Come to my store. No, come to my store. I'll give you this incentive. I'll give you this candy. No. Why is that permitted? What's that called? Why isn't that considered unfair competition? Why isn't that hasagat gvul? Why isn't that... We're both selling cameras. I want you to buy my camera, and you know what I'll do? Free battery. I was going to say free film, but it doesn't apply anymore today. Right? Free storage online, whatever, right? Why are you allowed to do that? What's another name for that? How come that's not considered in unfair competition?
To the product.
So again, okay. No, candies are allowed to. The rabbis allowed the store owners to go out and entice kids with candies that they'll come into the store to buy things. That the rabbi said is permitted. Two same stores. They're both selling toys. Store owner A says, come to my store, Johnny, I'll give you a candy, I'll give you a chocolate bar. And Billy says, no, come into my store, I'll give you, I don't know, Laffy Taffy. Permitted, said the rabbis. Why is that permitted? Competition. How come we don't say, we don't allow it? Why? Why is that permitted?
Because you can do it as well.
What do you mean?
If you start giving out candy, I can now start giving out candy as well.
Very
as far as
good.
I'm aware.
Yes, you are. So you're even allowed to compete. So even if I have a marketing, this is called marketing, you're allowed to market your product. I'm allowed to say, come into my store, I'll give you free eggs, and you'll buy candies, or you'll buy cameras. I'm allowed to, and you have a store, we both have the store, we're about to compete. There's nothing, and this is very important, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing wrong with competition. Not only is there nothing wrong with competition, there's also nothing wrong with marketing. And by the way, your candies have nothing to do with your cameras. It's actually very important, and you're still allowed to do it. So I'm allowed to come into my store. Do you know why? We have the best music. I'm not talking about my product. I'm not even saying come in because we have the best cameras in the world. No. Come to my store because we have I'll give you great candy. Permitted. Fishing competition, not allowed. Marketing competition, allowed. Woodcutters, we're trying to figure it out. Let's continue. The Talmud says is very important in the second half of this paragraph. Maybe one can say that, this disagreement is based on this statement. There's a Mishnah that says, Rabbi Huda says, don't do it. The rabbis say, do it. Maybe Rabbi Huna, at the beginning of 1, who says you're not allowed to have competition, is like Rabbi Huna. Says the Talmud, no, you can't make such a comparison. Why? Are we English? No, it rejects this because Chachamim may only permit juicing candies because the second store owner can also juice candies. In this situation, the original store owner can say the second one, you're cutting off my livelihood. Meaning, that's only when you have both stores that are open. But Rav Huna, at the beginning of step number 1, is saying, I'm coming in to cut wood. The original guy said, what are we talking about? I'm the only woodcutter in town. If you come to my street, my block, you're gonna make me go bankrupt and put out of business. What is this implying? What's this implication?
Unfair competition.
Unfair competition is problematic. Now, let's define unfair competition. I understand. We're allowed to give out products and give out candies and convince people to come to my store. Why isn't that considered unfair competition? Answer. What's the answer? Anyone know? It appears from here there's a very important principle. I'm allowed to sell products. What about competition for service? Depends. If the guy claims, if you live into my block, there ain't enough wood to cut between the two of us. I'm cutting wood. I'm servicing these 30 houses. You're going to come in? You're going to choke me. That's what this last line of the Talmud says. Kapaski le-chayute. You're going to cut off my livelihood. You're going to cut off my life. Chayute, from the word chayim, life. You're going to destroy me. If all I'm doing is selling cameras, I'm allowed to entice you to come into my store to buy my camera if I bring out, and I entice you with candies, or by the other financial incentive. That's totally fine. Why wouldn't that make the guy go bankrupt? Why couldn't the guy say, no, you also can't give out candies? But,
Like it depends. If there's only so many customers, there's a set amount.
okay.
So you're gonna take part of the market share from there.
So let's go back. Remember, our original case is very specific. No problem. It's a mavoi. It's an enclave. What do we see from these other cases? This last case, picture, they're Bloor and what's that camera guy that just advertises? Bloor and Bay and Bloor, Dundas Radio, something radio, Bayview Radio, right? The competition is there's no competition. It's unlimited. And by the way, this will be in the modern era, every store, in theory, markets the entire world. That medium is called internet. You put up a website, anyone in the world can now buy merchandise from you. So the modern day rabbis have to say, wait a second. The case where you have a situation of a small little enclave and you're providing a service, that might not apply anymore. Do you know why it might not apply anymore? Because maybe, if I'm selling something, if I'm selling cameras, I can open up here, and another guy can open up across the street from me. But in the modern era, we're not competing with 30 families. We're competing with billions of people. So that is going to be a fascinating approach. Again, when it comes to Uber, we have to see if that's likely or not. Okay.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there also a distinction between where there is one thing that's already established and then a new person comes, as opposed to
Yeah, very good. That's the next part.
things that are
Yes.
already there?
Very good. The other distinction is the Gemara is operating on a modus operandi that there's two people who are both selling cameras and both out there offering incentive called candies. But in our original case, it was one woodcutter. And some guy was showing up and saying, okay, I'm also going to cut wood. That would be very important for out-of-towners, as we'll see in a minute. Okay, let's read on the second part. Osa Adam Chanut, I'm going to now only read the Hebrew, challenges the Gemara. Osa Adam Chanut B'tzarchun Dosh Chavero. No, open up a store next to your friend's store. Umerchat B'tzar Merchat Dosh Chavero. And a schwitz next to your friend's schwitz. Ve'eno yocham b'yado. Open up a pizza shop next to your friend. It's not a problem. Everyone always said, again, going back to Lawrence and Bathurst, how could these guys open up a pizza shop? How could you have two shawarma places next to each other? The answer is because you're allowed to. This notion that you're not allowed to is such like a communist idea that's crept into Judaism. Right? Okay, I'm exaggerating. But not really. Misunderstanding. And you can't stop him. Why? Here's very important. I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing. Now, Tanaihi, it's a machloket. Kof, however, Kof b'nei mevuot zed zesh lo lahashi b'neihem lo chayav lo borskiv lo malamet dinagod lo echad b'nei bale umaniot. You can force a guy, right? You force a guy who's coming in, meaning you're allowed to force, and this is what's important. Tanakana holds that if two people live in the same neighborhood, you want to be an educator, and you want to be an educator, you look at what cutter, go ahead. Comes along Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, no, sorry, I apologize, but you're not allowed to have something outside. Meaning, you can force another guy who's moving in. But if he's a shachain, if they both live on the same block, then guess what? You cannot force them. However, the shechina, you can't. If it's an outsider who wants to move in, you're not allowed to. Meaning, if the local people want to, in the same block, want to create competition, no problem. But if you live in Thornhill, you want to open up a store in Toronto, not allowed to. That's according to Tanakama. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Shkoyach, thanks for helping. Af l'shcheino kafo. No, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says no. Even the neighbor's not allowed to. What? Uh-oh. Did we just... What's going on here? Here appears to be a problem. Because here we see a situation. All of a sudden, you're not allowed to have competition. I don't understand. Yes, competition, no competition.
So what's the deciding factor?
Here's one thing and here's another factor that all of a sudden gets brought up. An outsider. Meaning, when it comes to an outsider, everyone agrees an outsider can't walk in and open up a competing business. Sorry, not competing business. A competing, interesting, service. Not business, service. So again, when it comes to, let's go, what do we agree on? The whole fish thing you're not allowed to compete with. Now, why? Because that is, what's that based on? That can be based on finite resources. Right? And that you're literally stealing my fish. My net's out there, I'm capturing the fish. You put your net out there, you're going to take my fish. That you're not allowed to do. Everyone agrees you're allowed to stand in the street corner and get children into your store. We've noticed, however, it's fait accompli. These stores already are in existence. When it comes to service, and you providing a service, everyone agrees outsiders are not allowed to come in to compete. However, what about if you're local? That's a machlokas. One that everyone agrees, and this is what we've seen earlier as well, if you're going to cut off a guy's livelihood, even if you're local, you're not allowed to. That was a conclusion of, as you'll see later on, the Achronim are going to conclude that.
So are these laws about what you're allowed to do as a business person, or what a consumer?
So this, by the way,
a lot of this is about maybe
this
one of us wanted to become an Uber driver, but we really want to use Uber.
So it appears from here. That's a very, very good question. We'll put it this way: if this guy's not allowed to operate, you should not get business from them. You shouldn't use their business.
Not Jewish.
Right, but if it's against, we know that if it's stealing, that's actually a very good question. Because the Shulchan Aruch says that you're not stealing from a non-Jew is forbidden. And therefore, this guy opens up a business, which is stealing from someone else. Let's I'm not saying this is a conclusion. Let's say Uber's not allowed to operate because they're stealing from the taxi company. So by you purchasing an Uber, you're stealing the taxi company. You would not be allowed to do that because you're stealing. Right? Because you're stealing. By you using Uber, you're stealing from the taxi company. Unless you want to. By the way, is Uber providing a service, or are they considered a product? Could you even argue it's a product?
It's a service.
Yeah,
Is there an argument to say that it's a product? That's definitely a service.
It's a commodity. It's almost a commodity because you're paying for the gas. I mean, a lot of it's paying for the gas. Actually, no, maybe it's probably service.
So here's another interesting question: is an Uber driver? Are they an employee of Uber?
They're locals, so they fall under the local category.
But are they locally working for Uber?
Or you mean as opposed
I
to
don't
working
think
for
so.
themselves?
As opposed to working themselves.
They
Like,
get-
are they contract workers or are they employees legally? What's their legal status?
I
Their
don't, think,
status
I,
of
don't, I
an
don't think they're employees.
They're not employees.
Because by the way,
People
if they are employees, then the rule is you got to pay EI and CPP, and you have to give vacation pay, and you have to pay for their gas, and you have to pay for their expenses or reimburse them. If they're contract workers,
No, doesn't Uber provide like the infrastructure for them to do it, right? Like they provide the payment mechanism.
so
and
right
stuff
now
like
in
that.
California, the California state is trying to argue that Uber workers are actually employees
employees.
and deserve certain types of benefits. Only in California. I don't know if that's anywhere else. I'm not sure. It's a very interesting. I don't know enough about labor's laws and like, is that employee? What makes you an employee? What makes you? So it's interesting. But it appears they are providing a service, right? I think they're providing a service. It's a service industry. They're getting
And you
from
could
location
argue
A to
even
location
that
B
Uber is providing a service for the drivers that want to be part of Uber.
because they're
Like,
creating that
because
infrastructure.
They're saying, oh, you want to make money off of like giving people rides? You know, register with us, and we'll take care of like the payment and whatever for
Right.
you, and you can use the Uber name,
Name,
what have you,
right.
and we'll tell you when they're.
Because that means you've been pre-approved. That means you're legit.
I don't know. Yeah, but what's the line
Right.
between that?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. Okay, let's read on to this last line, and then we'll go from here. Amar Rav Yehuda Berei Rav Yeshua Pshitali Bar Mata Avar Mata Chrite Matzimaki. He says no. If it's a guy from another city, of course you can stop him. But if it's a local person, you can't stop them. If it's another guy in the same mavua, in the same enclave, you can't stop them. But you can't stop them. Lo matzemak, you can't stop them.
That's Rafuna.
Yeah.
Same.
No, it's different Rafuna, by the way. These are different Rafunas from this guy and the top guy. That's what I saw. Because this Rafuna is identified as Berei Rav Yeshua. The first one isn't, so it's different Rafuna. By Ravuna Berei Rav Yeshua Bar Mavua Avar Mavua Achrina My Teku. When he was asked this question, he said, "I'm not sure." Meaning, what about if someone else wants to come in? Can you stop him? He says, "I'm not sure." Okay, so we see from here there's
I
a
think you can.
no my Atiku, not sure.
But what's the one? Bar move away. Oh, then you can't. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, you can't. So we see from here that we're going to deal with local people different than we're going to deal with outsiders. And here's the question: what is the rationale behind treating local people different than outsiders? This will be very important. Why is it that we'll allow local people greater access than outsiders? So the reason is because of this concept called Bechraga Dahacha. The Ish Shayach Bechraga Dahacha. What is Bechraga Dahacha? There's a local tax. Meaning, every enclave would pay a local tax. What would that money go towards? Protection, roads, water, right? Kind of like today. So if I'm paying taxes in the city of Toronto, and therefore it gives me a certain amount, you're going to come in, mooch off of my taxes? You're going to come in and live off of what I'm paying towards? Now this is a fascinating question. I'll tell you why. Because the Gemara says that plays a very important role. Meaning, if we live together in the same courtyard, in the same enclave, and we're both paying equal amount of taxes, so therefore I can compete with you, you compete with me. But a guy who lives outside and wants to set up shop on the corner, we can throw him out. You know why? You don't live here. You don't contribute towards the maintenance of this road and the street and the lights and the water. I can throw you out. So the question is, what about if a guy starts paying for it? What about if a guy who lives outside says, okay, fine. Just we're writing a check. No problem. I'll write a check. I don't live here. I'll write a check. And I'll pay local taxes. Does that now give him the right like anybody else? And the question for our case will be licensing fees for taxis. Can we extrapolate this and say, listen, I'm a taxi company. I'm paying whatever I don't know what his name was. But it pays $100,000 a year for taxi licenses. You're going to show up, offer the exact same service, meaning transporting people from location to location B, and they're going to pay a licensing fee? Pay the licensing fee, and then you could compete with me. But it's not fair to compete with me if you don't pay the licensing fee. Maybe you could argue, don't compete with me if you're not paying local taxes. This is not fair. You're benefiting from everything that we're kind of doing and supporting. So the question is, can you extrapolate between paying a local fee, a local tax, and a licensing fee? Are they the same? Or no, you say a local tax is a local tax, and a licensing fee is the Talmud here was just talking about a local fee. They're not talking about a licensing fee, right? So local fee. You're not from this town. You're not paying local taxes. Pay local taxes, then you can sell to us.
Well, maybe in the case, the local tax was some sort of a percentage, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But the licensing fee is just a one-time fee. So maybe because of that we can
extrapolate it too.
Maybe.
It's a good point. I thought of that. Okay. It's a set fee. So I don't know if taxes were set. I'm not quite sure actually how it worked. I think it was like an income tax?
Probably like a percentage.
Right. Or it could be a head tax. Right?
Well, either way, it's over a period of time, and the licensing fee is just one time.
It's not annual?
So,
Yeah, it's not annual. I think
it's not?
No, it's a one-time thing.
Yeah, it's one time thing.
You pay $100,000 once.
Yeah.
You have to operate for like a lot of years just to pay off your fee. Forget about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think it's close to $500,000 in New York.
Really?
Yeah.
The rationale behind it is you'll make it back over.
Right.
Right. Wow. Yeah, New York? That's crazy. I get it, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of taxis in New York. A lot of people take them and use them. But Ubers are also, I'm sure, very popular in New York now, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, somebody I know just took an Uber in Manhattan.
Here? Oh my
Who's just... Somebody in Manhattan, they said it was like $4 to go, like, you know, from one end to the other. Usually it would cost, you know, like 20.
goodness. $4 to go like 2 blocks.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at the Rishonim. What time is it?
1 o'clock.
No, oh my goodness. Is that 1 o'clock?
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. You guys have class now, don't you?
No.
I don't know class.
You guys have work to do?
Always.
Always. Okay. So you know what? It's fine. There's no mitzvah to rush. Next week, we're gonna take the Gemara that we learned, and we're gonna see how the Rishonim tried to understand it. Or if we don't have time for that, I'll even get to the bottom line: is what's the halacha? How does the Shulchan Aruch take the Rishonim and try to weave in halacha and what's established? And then once we get that, can we extrapolate to Uber just based on this issue? And there's a couple of other issues that we need to... One issue, by the way, that people are saying is if you have to get to the hospital on Shabbos, is Uber the best way to do it? Is that even better than a taxi? Assume that Uber is permissible, blah, 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 blah. Is Uber now the best method of transportation on Shabbos?
Then even then, because...
What was that?
Even if it's not permissible, and it's life-threatening.
Okay, then you get a car and drive.
Okay.
But we have a principle that we say you should always try to do the lesser of two things on Shabbos. Meaning, a woman is giving birth, rarely you have 5 minutes. Okay, if you do, then you just go. Right? Contractions, you have 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. I know of one case where they gave birth in the parking lot. Right? But generally speaking, you do have time. So, and at the end of the day, you could even argue an Uber potentially could be faster if it's a guy down the block from you, right? You call a taxi company, they have to do their dispatch, so it could be far away, whereas Uber, right, it's all local people. So, you can even argue an Uber is closer and faster and cheaper. Is it better to use an Uber than... Anyways, we'll deal with that at the end, but it's an interesting question. Because it deals with a lot of things about Shabbat and about... Okay. And if you take a look at the back of the page, by the way, those are those questions. Are the Uber drivers who ostensibly live locally the ones competing with taxi drivers? Or is Uber the company, the competitor of the taxi owners? Right? Because every Uber driver lives down the block. So he's a local guy. But if you say that it's the Uber company, so they got to pay a fee. Uber company maybe is an outsider. Yeah, could be even the local guy is an outsider. But we definitely see the guys who live locally are given better treatment. Either if you want to tell me it's because they're paying the local taxes, and that's fine. The guy down the block is paying his local taxes, Uber driver. If you're saying, no, extrapolate the fees, that's going to be a big problem, because obviously you're not paying fees. Okay, we haven't even gotten to 2 or 3 yet. But the question will also be, what about if there's such a huge savings, does that have an implication or not? All right, fine. To be continued.
I have a hunch the answer will be that it's okay.